Kosniewski here. I'm going to be getting on a plane in about an hour to head out to Chester, England for British. Okay, we live now. Hey guys, Steve Kosniewski here. I'm going to be getting on a plane in about an hour to head out to Chester, England for British Fantasy Con. So if I don't do this now, I probably won't get around to it. I just want to do a quick rundown on Scares That Cares Authorcon 4 in St. Louis, Missouri, which was this past weekend. So this was kind of an interesting case because the Scares That Cares charity has been around for, I think, 15 to 20 years. And they've been doing events since probably 2013, 2015. And they started doing AuthorCon 4 years ago. So I've been to every AuthorCon. I've been to most of the Scares That Cares flagship events back when they had those. Before it was AuthorCon, they also had actors and all sorts of other folks that would come out for the events. Um, but it's always been in Williamsburg, Virginia. Occasionally they would have other events like the Shrimp Feast that was in Baltimore, Maryland, and other stuff like that. But by and large, they have a good relationship with the hotel in Williamsburg, Virginia. Um, this year they've started branching out. So I believe this was the first one that was different, moving out to St. Louis. So my understanding, and I'm not affiliated with the charity except by affection and long-standing, having been a vendor, having been a guest of honor on occasion. Pardon me. I have no affiliation with the charity, but I think that their idea was that the Midwest is kind of an underserved population in the horror community. Apparently, St. Louis in particular does not get many great events. So I think their thinking was, let's move out there. We'll get some of the same vendors that we always get for the East Coast, who will kind of follow us like me, who will kind of follow us wherever we go. Then we'll be able to serve a whole different, community, get different readers in there, and then maybe, other vendors, obviously the local vendors are going to want to come to that, and then potentially you could also have the West Coast people who might be willing to split the difference and come in there. So I think that was their thinking with this. And of course, it is always a charity, fundamentally. Scares That Cares exists to benefit three families every year and offer at least $10,000 to a breast cancer survivor, a childhood cancer survivor, and a burn victim. So it's always a good cause. But of course, the folks in the charity have to keep first and foremost in their minds, that it's a charity. So my experience was very fun. It was a very different vibe I found from. It's strange. I guess I have to keep coming up with different terms because I've always called the old con where they had actors and that sort of thing the flagship con. So I'm not sure how to refer to. I was about to say the flagship author con, but now it sounds kind of confusing. But I guess I'll just say there was a very different vibe to St. Louis than to the Williamsburg AuthorCon. Um, it was still very nice. Obviously, everybody was out there for charity. Um, I guess it was just having a different crowd and having a different venue, and having a different, group of attendees. Of course, there was the whole getting to meet up with the people who have become like your inherited, I guess I should say adopted, although in some cases inherited, family. So I departed from my home in central Pennsylvania on Friday morning. The con was Friday through Sunday of last week. Oh god, my calendar's not even telling me the right thing. The 4th to the 6th. So the 4th to the 6th of October. Um, Zach Cass says, it seemed more author focused, less reader come meet author, if that makes any sense. Oh, yeah, perhaps you're right, Zach. There are certainly cons, so without getting too deep into the whole thing, There are cons that are professional cons where the idea is to just come meet people in the business, and then there are fan cons, which are, like you think of classically San Diego Comic Con, where it's like fans get to come out and meet Mark Hamill or whoever. And yeah, Scares the Cares always kind of splits the difference to some extent because I can't speak for the actors except that I never was hanging out with actors after hours. So I can't really speak for the actors, but the authors were always very welcoming. They'd be hanging out with us in the lobby or in the bar or wherever. So you'd find yourself hanging out with John Langan or Paul Tremblay or whoever. It was always very cool and very welcoming in that regard. So I guess Zach's feeling was that this felt more like a professional con, which is not a bad thing. Um, and the other thing to bear in mind is that this was a first year con, and first year cons always have trouble getting off the ground. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It certainly can be a bad thing. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just you've never worked through the logistics. You've never been in this particular venue. You don't know where you need security. You don't know if people are going to come out. Just everything that could possibly go wrong, may or may not go wrong. So bearing in mind that, as I was saying earlier, although the Scares That Cares, I don't want to say brand, but the brand of the charity has been around for a long time. This was still a first year con in that regard. They'd never done it in St. Louis before. So while they had a lot of people that were very experienced, uh, you never know. You never know if the attendees are going to show up, um, or any of another million little things that can go wrong. So as I was saying, with my experience, the con was Friday to Sunday, the 4th to the 6th. I departed. I actually, at KillerCon, if you watched my recap of that, I was stuck in the airport for hours trying to get to Texas. This was actually a pretty pleasant couple of little flights for me getting down there. So I actually arrived when I was supposed to. I think it was 10 a.m. or something on Friday morning. I caught up with Wiley Young and Wesley Southard, my good friends who I often see at these events. Um, so they brought me some steak and shake, and I had not thought about it, but steak and shake is one of my favorite burgers. I've been around the country a little bit, mostly from my time in the Army, and I've tried all of the big ones. I've tried In-N-Out Burger in California. I've tried Steak and Shake in the Midwest. I've tried Five Guys and whatever the other places are out here in the East. And I think Steak and Shake is by far the best burger. So take that for what you will. Um, so then we opened up, I want to say at 4. So the rest of the afternoon, I was kind of dead on my feet because I'd been up since 4 a.m. But I wasn't gonna go and get any sleep at that point. I'd arrived at 10, maybe arrived at the hotel at 11 or 12. Had about 4 hours. I wasn't gonna get any meaningful sleep at that point. So I just got to meet some friends and fans and the kind of and fellow authors. Armand Rosamilia and Aaron Beauregard and Daniel Volpe and Judith Sonnet and all the folks that were there. Um, so we opened up and blew the doors off the shutters. And as I recall, that's how it was at Williamsburg Authorcon last year. I made all my sales on Friday night. So I think that people would come out to play on Friday night. I'm just making sales hand over fist. I heard a few people, a few vendors saying that they were not doing good sales. Um, I think maybe it's just a salesmanship kind of thing. And I'm no expert. I mean, I'm an expert in the sense that I've been doing conventions for 11 years now, so I've tabled many times. I've been at awful conventions. Uh, and I can tell you this was not a bad convention. The foot traffic was good. Even for a first year con, the foot traffic was good. There were opportunities to make sales, and so perhaps I'm in a better position to close the sale than some folks were. But, whatever. They can let you know their experiences and their own recaps of the events. Um, but yeah, Friday was really, really a great sales day for me. And What? Did we get dinner? I guess we must have gotten dinner. Oh, that's right. So, Wes and Wiley ordered some pizzas. And I have to say, I've now tried the St. Louis pizza, and it's just god awful. I'm sorry, I don't know what you guys are doing out there in the Midwest. It's like a thin crust pizza, but then it's cut as though it were square. It's very strange and not very good. So you guys fail. Chicago, of course, still fails. Old Forge style pizza is by far the worst in the planet. Uh, I am, of course, a great partisan of New York style pizza. No reason why anybody should have attempted to improve upon that masterful formula. So yeah, St. Louis, you lose points for your horrible pizza thing there. Um, so we pretty much just ate pie and then, headed back downstairs where Wiley and the other nerds were playing Magic the Gathering. Angel Holman Gaston. LOL, but did you try Lion's Choice roast beef while you were there? I cannot say that I tried roast beef. And again, I'm just noticing now, my partner often tells me to clean up the room before I do these lives, and I'm just noticing just now that I have a bunch of laundry baskets in the background. So I want to reiterate, I'm on borrowed time right now. I need to be out the door in like an hour to catch a plane to England. So I apologize for that. No, Angel, I did not try any roast beef. Nobody advised me to include Wes Southard, the supposed ambassador of the Midwestern charm. So, sorry. I'm sure you guys have other things that are options. Angel says Wesley Southard should have set you up with that. Agreed. Agreed. Wesley was a terrible ambassador on my behalf. I feel like. No, I'm harsh on Wesley, but he's of course a great guy and a great friend. Um. Oh yes. So Wiley Young and Maurice Broadus and Brian Keene and I think Millie Price. Oh, and Alexander Bailey. He's an author now, so I'll go ahead and say his name. I always preface these things by saying I'm not going to say anybody's name that is not a public figure. So that will, of course, hold true for this. But I guess Alexander Bailey's being published now, and he was tabling at Armand Rosemilia's table when Armand unfortunately had a family emergency and had to leave. But they were all playing Magic, so we got to hang out a little bit. And that was very cool. I know there was a big bar con going on around the corner in the bar, and I'm sure that was fine too. I honestly I don't think I made my way into the bar the entire weekend, but that's all right. I think I'm going to make up for it in England, is my understanding. Apparently, the bar con is very much what you do there, and you don't have room parties, and you don't have alcoves that you play Magic in. Although, not that I was going to play. I haven't played Magic in 30 years. Um, so yeah, Dead to the World. I actually kind of went to sleep fairly early on Friday night. And then, of course, Saturday is the big day. So we opened up at 10. I think we closed at 6 for the vendor's room. So Saturday was slow, appreciably slower than Friday. But overall, I don't worry about that. I always have to look at the weekend as a whole. And again, the weekend as a whole was a great sales event for me. Uh, Close to regular Williamsburg Scares the Cares numbers. So I think it can only go up and improve from here. My suspicion is if they do St. Louis again, as I said, they'll get over those first year logistics humps, and I think it'll be a really good event, and that vendors and authors are going to want to go to. It already was an event that everybody wanted to go to, and I think everybody in the Midwest was very excited to have this happening. And that was certainly what was presented to me as I was meeting people. There were a lot of people that were like, "Yeah, I'm from 5 minutes down the road. We've really been waiting for something like this." Because I was kind of asking them. I was kind of trying to feel out. I was like, "Is it true that St. Louis doesn't really have conventions like this?" Apparently so. So, filling a niche. Um, so sales were not as great on Saturday. Weekend taken as a whole, but sales were pretty good. Um, but I was also away from my table for 2 hours on Saturday. So the first event that I had was a panel on publishing in 2024 with Paul Goblish and Jacob Haddon and a couple of other fellows I didn't know quite as well. Um, so that was a really nice panel. Um, there were a lot of questions, as I thought there would be. So this might go back to Zach's point about how it felt more like a industry event than a fan event. There were a lot of questions about how do I get published? What's the future of publishing? Um, and it was very cool to hear everybody's opinions and outlooks and that kind of thing. So that panel went very well. It seemed to me like all the panels were going pretty well attended. That one in particular was very well attended. And the rule of thumb is a panel is only good if there's more people in the audience than at the table. And then I pretty much just hurried back to my table and made 3 or 4 sales, and then had to come out for my reading. So this is a very cool reading. I often get to read with Jeff Strand. I don't think I've ever done a reading with Clay McLeod Chapman before, although I've met him a few times and I'm aware of his intense energy. So I had a reading with Clay and Jeff, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like the clown show, the humorous the humorous horror authors all in one place. Uh, that was not what Clay read. Clay read one of the most intense, like heartbreaking readings that I've heard in a long time. It was the opening to his new novella, which is called Kill Your Darling, I believe. So go and check that out. He brought that same intensity that I've seen, and I'm sure you've all seen if you follow Clay on any form of social media. Um, so Jeff uh, read his The Next Best Baker, which I have seen him perform before, and that always goes over very well. That I think is one of his better readings. I think his very best reading is the Crazy Card Dealer. That always brings down the house like rain or shine. But this one is also a very good one. The Next Best Baker. It's like a play on one of those cooking shows or baking shows where the people are so intense that they're just willing to take any kind of abuse from the hosts and be like, yes, chef, thank you so much for spitting in my face, Gordon Ramsay or whoever. And he just takes that to a really intense extreme. Um, and my reading, I actually have to apologize to Nathan Ludwig. I know I told him, hey, come out to my reading because I have a piece, and I'm going to be performing it at British Fantasy Con, actually. I have a piece where I mentioned Nathan Ludwig a couple of times and how he's inspired me. And I told him, hey, come to my reading, and then I didn't read that piece. So I feel bad about it. So sorry about that, Nathan. I will record it or get it caught up with you. Um, but I we talked about it, and the three of us were like, well, let's each do a good 15-minute piece. And this other piece that I'm talking about, where I talk about Nathan Ludwig, and I'm going to be doing it at FantasyCon, is a bit shorter, and it's more for a impactful little punch. So one of my super fans was there, and he asked if I would tell the story of the time that we went up on Lawless Mountain and ate mushrooms. I did not eat any magic mushrooms, but magic mushrooms were eaten. And I was like, well, I can tell that story, but I haven't prepared a reading. But I do like a challenge, and so I did an extemporaneous reading, more of a, I guess, kind of like a stand-up act, which I've also done that. I've been trying to do that over at Vortex Books, here not too far from here in Columbia, Pennsylvania. So it's not my first time speaking extemporaneously, and I mean, I've been public speaking for again 30 odd years, so uh, it's fun, and I think that the audience enjoyed it. So I was pretty proud of that. And like at worst case scenario, people at least say, "Oh wow, he seemed to really be working without a net." At a minimum, if they thought that I memorized it, they know that I memorized it. But no, it was indeed an extemporaneous performance. So I think all three of the readings went very well. Then we went back to vending for a couple more hours. Then Wesley Wiley and I and Craig Brownlee had dinner at a local Italian place. Um, and it's always very nice to get to hang out with Craig. I guess I only see him once or twice a year. Uh, so we had dinner with Craig and his spouse and the rest of the team. So it was nice to. Okay, author Millie Price said it was good. Oh, the extemporaneous reading. Thank you. Um, yeah, so it was good. It was good to catch up with Craig. Um, and then we headed back, and so that's 6. Maybe we get over there at 7. Maybe we're back by 9, something like that. So everything's in full swing. And the big event for the night was the Michael Allen Rose performance. Unfortunately, they had a mentalist, Dakota Lawrence. I've met him a few times. I think his name is Dakota Lawrence. Unfortunately, Dakota couldn't come out on Friday night. So the big show for Saturday was the Michael Allen Rose show, and then the Bitter Corella show. Um, but instead of doing that, Wiley and Maurice and a bunch of other people were sitting in a corner playing Magic the Gathering. So we got to experience that again. Um, and this was a really lovely and eye-opening evening for me because Maurice Brodus took me aside and had a nice long conversation with me about my career. And I think he was kind of fundamentally telling me something that I've heard once or twice in my career, but you like to hear it. You like to hear it from your peers. You like to hear it from readers, but you especially like to hear it from somebody you respect as much as a icon like Maurice. He said that I'm doing good. Like I'm not that I'm doing good with sales. Obviously, I'm not doing good with sales. That I'm not that I'm doing well. That I'm doing good. That I'm doing good things in the world and helping out younger authors and helping out other people, and that he's noticed that and he wants to consequently help me out and improve the community and that sort of thing. So that was a really nice heart to heart that we had. Um, and I had a lot of people, fans and friends and that kind of thing, tell me how much they enjoyed Fascist Police State and how much they enjoyed Hamadophage. A lot of people, a lot of Hamadophage's fans. So overall, it was a very good event for my ego, and we we stayed up pretty late. I think I got to bed around 1 or so. Well, come to think of it, I guess that's not very late for me. But I'm also on borrowed time, flying in and everything. And so Sunday morning is the shorter, the shortest of the events, and I think we were supposed to be open from 10 to 3. Pardon me. But of course, I had to catch my plane out around 2. So made a couple more. I packed up in the morning, packed up all my stuff, and headed downstairs. I spent the rest of the day convinced that I had left my toiletry bag in the hotel, but you'll all be very gratified to know I did not. I remembered to bring it. And we made a few more sales, and then finally, like I said, got to speak to a few people who I hadn't really spoken to during the rest of the weekend. Oh, actually, Nikki Noir. I don't think I've ever met her, but she edited my piece in Welcome to the Show, Welcome to the Club 3. So I'd never met her. She stopped by the table at one point. Got to talk to Judith Sonnet a little bit. She stopped by the table, and I met her at KillerCon, and then we got to chat a little bit here. And actually, if you haven't seen, she's going to be publishing me in her upcoming Screams. So that's going to be very cool. Um, oh, and yeah, got like I mentioned, got to hang out with Paul Goblish and some of those folks. Uh, I always descend to this point where, and again, I always say this every video. I always descend to this point where I feel like I'm just name dropping, and my goal is not to name drop. And again, if there's somebody that I spoke to that I had a lovely conversation with, it's not that I didn't enjoy our conversation. I just could sit here for an hour and do nothing but name drop, and that would get very boring and just seem very egotistical. So I try not to do that. So again, I'm sure if we had a great experience, I'm not leaving you out because I want to, or I didn't care for you, or I didn't care for our conversation. I just physically cannot mention everybody that I talk to or have a great moment with at these sorts of events. Um, so I did have to head out, and then I was shocked when Millie Price is in the chat and another author. Um, well, I'm not sure how she wants to be called, so we'll just say another author. I do know her pen name and I know her real name, but well, let's just leave it at that. So Millie Price and another author um, texted me and they were like, "Where's your gate?" And I told them the gate, and they're like, "Oh, we're leaving from this gate, so let's hang out." So actually, that was nice. And when I was at KillerCon, I got to do the same thing with CV Hunt and Anderson Prunty to actually just hang out at the airport and kind of get through the whole con thing, and then just like have a conversation like normal people, and not be surrounded with the pressure of are people watching us and looking at what we're doing and waiting for us to be canceled and then this and that sort of thing. So that's a very nice, intimate way to spend the last few hours at the airport. So thanks for joining me. Like I said, weird time of day. I know most of you are at work or something like that. So not too many of you could join me in the comments, but I appreciate those of you that did. If you have any last questions, throw them in there right now. Otherwise, I've got to go run like a bunny. Author Millie Price said and beer. Yeah, well, I didn't want to make us look like alcoholics, but yes, of course. I was actually kind of downplaying all of the alcoholism over the weekend as best I could. But yes. Um, so, yeah, I do gotta go run, hop quick like a bunny, and go head out to England. So, I am looking forward to seeing a whole bunch of people that I have never met before, and a few people that I've only met like once or twice before. So if you're going to be in Chester this weekend at British Fantasy Con, looking forward to seeing you there. Make sure to come up and say hi. You'll probably be able to pick me out of the crowd from my accent, although I would argue it's not really an accent. It's just how people are supposed to talk, right? Like this is normal, right? This is baseline, right? So anyway, thanks everybody. A little abbreviated, but half an hour. I tend to go long on these things because obviously I like to talk, but half an hour is not bad for a little recap. So thanks everybody, and I will try and on the air, in the airports and that kind of thing, throw this up on YouTube and everything else, and then I will catch you in England, and hopefully next week have a recap on that, and then the week after that is the deadlift in Pittsburgh. It's all on my blog. There's I think the 19th I'm going to be in Pittsburgh, and the 26th I'm going to be in Baltimore. But go check out my blog for the other events throughout October, which are going to be numerous. But I'm looking forward to all of them. So thanks everybody. I'll catch you later.